Hey folks, and welcome to Skeptic Voices, the brainstorm production that spends more time on getting to know the people in our community and less time on the issues. As skeptics, we spend more of our time learning, debating, and educating than we do on other pursuits, but we're still all people with families, jobs, home lives, and the other things we value. I want to spend a little bit of time each month with one of my favorite members of the skeptic community and get to know them on a more personal level, instead of just debating ideas. I'll interview a different person each month and hopefully learn something about them that I didn't know before. This month's interview was with Jeanne Ikerd, former host of the Polyamory podcast and a staple guest on some of my favorite shows. I had a great talk with Jeanne about all kinds of things, and I think I got to know her a whole lot better than I did before, which is kind of the point of this show. So here it is, I hope you enjoy it, my interview with Jeanne Ikerd.
'Cause things got better. And everything could change like that. And all these years.
I guess a good place to start is like, what's your name? Where do people in the community maybe know you from? Stuff like that.
Okay. Well, my name's Jeanne, and I live in Vermont. Grew up in Alaska, and if anybody really has ever heard of me, it was probably because they listened to Podunk Polymath.
That's a good show.
I've been on a couple of Chris's shows, so yeah.
No, right on.
Yeah, he's kind of tired of me at this point.
Yeah. What were you on his show talking about?
Well, the first one I was on there was an emergency. Hey, can you be my, how soon can you record? And do you have the ability to record? And do you have anything that you're passionate about? He needed an emergency guest. And I talked about, I had actually just gotten booted off of Facebook for 24 hours for inappropriate pictures because there were women's nipples involved.
Yes.
So
can't have that.
No, not at all, apparently. So I got booted for sex positivity. So that was my focus on his first show. And then other than that, cool. I kind of turned into one of the poly girls, I guess.
Okay. What is that?
Polyamory.
In case somebody doesn't know.
Polyamory, yeah.
Polyamory.
Mm-hmm. Or
okay.
Specifically more open relationships. I've started redefining myself recently as more of a relationship anarchist. That was a term I hadn't heard until recently, and I kind of examined it for a bit. I think that fits a little bit better than just polyamorous.
Okay. But
open relationships just in general, I'm a supporter of and a member of. Not currently, but yes.
But potentially.
Well, have been, will be.
There you go.
Yes.
No, right on. Yeah, I don't really know much about polyamory, or the whole open relationships thing. I was always, I'm raised in rural Saskatchewan, so that was kind of a backwoods. If it's not traditional, it's no good type thing.
Oh, yeah, I was raised in rural Alaska. I understand. So the concept behind open relationships or polyamory, swinging also falls into that, is that people are open to having either sexual or romantic relationships with more than one person, that we can accept that this happens, that it is not a binary thing, much like most people are not necessarily binary about everything in their life. Most people have a lot of shades of gray in between, and this just happens to be one of them.
That's interesting. So I guess just 'cause, when was your last relationship, and how many partners were in it?
Oh, I'm not sure I want to make this on air.
Well, that's fair enough. If you don't.
No, but I will tell you, and you can choose to use it or not. My last girlfriend was Riss McCool, and so I dated her for a couple of months. We saw each other a few times, but we had a geographical conflict. So there would also be her husband and her husband's boyfriend as well. And Riss had a couple of girlfriends during that time, sort of. So yeah,
I think they're all pretty openly poly and and I guess pansexual. Is that what it would be like?
Well, I'm not sure because everybody kind of gets to make up their own labels and just say, this is what defines me right now. So,
yeah.
Which is cool. Like I'm totally fine with whatever it is that,
for sure,
whatever makes your heart and your junk happy, like go do that.
Right.
As long as everybody's on board, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So before that, I've been in triads a few times, which would be 3 people in an equilateral relationship. I've been loosely part of a quad before, where it was 4 people that we were friends all the time, and then occasionally hooked up just for the sexy parts. I'm actually still, I call them formers, not exes. I have a few exes.
Okay.
But I
Yeah.
but I have a few formers that are people that are ex-lovers of mine, and we aren't right for each other. We're not in a relationship, but we still have one. So we're not sexually intimate, but we talk often. We're the people that call each other when there are questions or stress. You know, like you understand me. We've been through this together. You're one of my best friends. So I would still consider that a poly relationship, which is why I kind of come around to relationship anarchy. It's just because we're not getting our scrunchy bits together. Just because whenever we get together, there aren't necessarily, and probably aren't, orgasms that are happening. That doesn't mean that I'm not in a relationship with them.
That's an interesting way to look at relationships, and that's versus the very this is this type of relationship, that's that type of relationship. It's kind of just all degrees of varying relationships. It's kind of interesting.
Well, I think that more people have what I would consider to be an open relationship than most people would consider themselves to be. And I'm guessing that you haven't only had one relationship in your life, correct?
No, that's right.
Okay. But I mean, they might be monogamous.
Yeah.
But it's, we call that serial monogamy. So you are not monogamous specifically. It is not you find your one true person and then that's it. Right.
Yeah. Like in the animal kingdom or whatever, monogamous means they stay with that partner till they die, right?
And I think science, and you're going to fact check me on this one, but I'm pretty sure that science has said that there are, after extensive research, like more actual looking into things, that most animals are not one mate for life, period.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it's actually super rare, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is. I'm not going to give you a number because you're going to provide that number, but, but yes, it is statistically unlikely that pretty much any mammal is 100% monogamous. It rarely happens.
Yeah, that kind of comes from, I don't know. I was reading like Daryl Ray's book on sex and God,
mm-hmm.
and he kind of goes into the history of stuff, some of that stuff, and it's like the idea of monogamous relationships is so tied up with property and like agricultural societies and the advent of that. Like it's really interesting to learn about anyway.
Mm. It is. Well, that's interesting that you've started kind of delving into that a little bit. And I think that makes a good case for, we are not historically monogamous, that the advent of our concept of monogamy is very, very new.
Right.
That it has been common through most cultures that occasionally women have lovers, and we have to Eleanor of Aquitaine to thank for that. Usually men have lovers or other wives. Sometimes women are in cultures where they share husbands or brother relationships. And even in the Civil War, that was expected. If you died in battle, your brother would marry your widow.
Right.
And take care of the family. That's how property kept passing down the line.
Right. Because you still got to keep your property in your family, right?
Well, some people seem to think so, yeah.
Yeah. Not that now and nobody owns anything. So.
Well, I know I don't. So do you have any questions? Here's an Ask a Polly moment. It's one of those AMA.
One of those Ask a Polly.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Ask me anything. Okay.
Well, I mean, I have listened to a lot of different shows where it happens to be the polyamory episode, or they happen to be talking about polyamory this time. And one of the things that they always seem to have an answer for in their own case, but I don't know that would ever work for my own relationships, is the idea of jealousy. You know, like, because it seems that you have to be super secure in yourself to do that sort of thing, right?
Well, it's kind of a misnomer. There are some people that I think really don't feel jealousy, but I think most people do. It's more what we do with it.
Right.
So the other thing that you probably hear a lot, because this is the common question, is jealousy. How does that work? The other part that you're going to hear quite a bit is it's all about the communication. And it's not just communicating with your partner and your partner's partner and your other partner, but you have to communicate with yourself first. So unless you're very, and I'm still working on this, but unless you're very aware of kind of how your own brain works and how your emotions feel and how you react to those, and if you can't communicate all of that to yourself and then out to the people in your world, your relationship is likely due to fail. And I think that's true. I think that's true for both monogamy and polyamory. It just open relationships puts a magnifying glass on top of that.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, actually, a lack of self-examination is definitely a cause of many relationships.
Well, even self-examination, but maybe you have that examination, but you can't have a constructive discussion with somebody about that. That will also cause a relationship to fail. So
yeah, it's so. Do you have? What about family? What is your family life like?
Are you talking about my bio family?
Yeah, or extended family, if you consider other people family members or whatever.
I have a few. I was raised very conservatively Christian. My parents met at Northwest Nazarene College in Napa, Idaho.
Okay.
And then my dad shipped my mom up to Alaska, where he lived for a year or two, and she'd never been, and it was a little bit of a culture shock for her. And so I was raised in the church, baptized like 3 or 4 times before I finally got out. My mom knows and is on board. My dad knows and loves me anyway because he's still a Christian. And because I'm his daughter, and so it was just me and my sister, and my sister actually she's trying open relationships for the first time. Right. And this is like brand new, but she's known that I've been poly for, I'm going to say close to 20 years now. So we have a very close relationship. And when she asked me to be the godmother for her first child, I actually asked her to go to her husband at the time and say, like, make sure that you know that this might be Aunt Jeannie and Aunt somebody else. This might be Aunt Jeannie and Uncle somebody else. Or this might be Aunt Jeannie and Uncle Jeannie and Aunt Jeannie and the other uncle. like this is like your family. I'm not going to hold this back from this relationship. If you're going to ask me to be the godparent, I'm not going to be a dirty little secret. So,
that's fair.
So I got asked, like, I've been very clear, and she's very accepting, and now she's trying it for herself for the first time. So we'll see how it goes. But I know that she's not going to ask me any questions at all. Like,
well, of course not.
Well, like, but I've been there. I've done that. Like, I've made all those stupid mistakes. You should ask me what not to do because I've done all those things that you should never, ever, ever do. And that's her learning curve.
Yeah, everybody's got their own, I guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, what about extended family? That you have other people that you count as family?
I guess I do. I have 2 incredibly close farmers, and I talk to them on a regular basis. And I have 2 very close friends. One of them, I actually I call her the keeper of my death. So she is the one that has, like, if there's any money to inherit, it's hers. She has to figure out what to do with my cat. She's the one that will decide whether or not to unplug me and make sure that my what happens after I become a corpse, she makes sure that happens. I don't want to be in a cemetery plot. So she holds my death. She will be the one who will walk me out into the woods and put a bullet in my head if I don't have the ability to do so myself, if it comes to that. So
do you have is that just something that you've agreed with her, or do you have a living will? So like that says like, this is the person who pulls the plug and this is, I've started on a living will. She is the beneficiary on anything of mine that's remotely money related. Not that there's going to be much of anything left over. Right. But my parents are both very aware that they're probably not going to be around to see my death. My sister doesn't want the responsibility, and they're very, very happy. And my mother and my sister have both met the keeper of my death and are happy that she's in my life and that she's going to be able to take that role and make those decisions. That's cool.
Yeah.
Must be a very strong friendship then to...
It is. We've been coworkers. We've been housemates. We've been friends forever. Well, not forever. We've been friends for 10 years, but it's one of those things where I get a call saying, hey, my dad's longtime girlfriend just got killed in a motorcycle accident. I'm going to be in town for the funeral. Will you help be my emotional support? So I got off work and I drove 8 hours and I crashed for 4, and we got together and hung out for a day. We crashed for another 4 or 5 hours and I drove back home and then went back to work, because that's what you do for your family.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not cool that she had to go through that, but it's cool that she had somebody to support her.
Well, yeah, but like I'm not going to say no. She's my family. She's the person that belongs with me. And I proposed to her when she was, when she was out of money, out of health insurance. I'm like, well, I have health insurance right now. You know that I'm poly. I know that you're not. We've never had a sexual connection with each other, but that doesn't change that we're at least emotionally related. We have a relationship. So if you want to get married, I won't care if you want to go like have all the sex you want, like go enjoy the Bay Area. You don't have to report to me and let me know what you're doing. I just want to make sure that you're covered. So if you need the health insurance, I will marry you. And that would make some of the death stuff a little bit easier. And we talked about it for about 6 months and she kind of opted not to.
Oh, well, I guess that's a good way to make sure somebody's taken care of, though, I guess, if you have insurance or and you have to get married for them to be the beneficiary, then I guess my own relationship, we've been living together for 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. So the government just in Canada just says, okay, well, now you're a couple. You might as well be married.
We had the same thing in Alaska as well. I can't remember what it's called. Not communal marriage.
Common law?
Common law marriage. Thank you. No, what I do is communal marriage. What you do is common law. But yeah, it was, and I think that it has more to do with our internal realities of having that much space, and sometimes that little connection to the legal aspects, like the shit that if you get to town, you don't really want to have to go deal with. Because you're busy doing like 3 months worth of grocery shopping. So, actually, I guess there would be a number of people that I would be common law married to at this point.
Yeah. I know. I never understood how that really worked. Like, how can they say that you're married to somebody if you're in a platonic relationship or just happen to be roommates? But
there are probably other hoops that you have to jump through as well. Like, you know, if you share bills not share bills, but if you have like a joint bank account or something, or if you have progeny together, that probably tips that a little bit more in a favor. If you buy a house together, things like that. Right.
Yeah. I always kind of thought that it was like, almost a little bit, still stuck in like this idea of the traditional relationships, because you've got, if a man and a woman live together for long enough, then they're automatically common law. But what about two guys? What about two girls?
Oh wait,
What about?
I thought that Canada has been progressive or more progressive than the U.S. for a while. Is that not true?
Well,
Is it only for
well,
heterosexual?
I mean, for common law, I don't know.
Interesting. Hey, you got something else to look up.
Yeah, that's right. I've often wondered that. I couldn't find it anywhere that said, like, I know if you are, like, if me and my girlfriend didn't want to be common law, we'd have to make a contract that said we were not partners in a way.
Interesting. So it's like the anti-marriage thing.
Yeah, you have to opt out.
Well, in that case, when I first moved to Vermont, I was married to 5 people within a year, or within 2 years. I lived in a big house with a number of housemates, and
right,
and probably also by proxy, whatever their girlfriends or boyfriends at the time as well, because they were over there a lot.
Might as well have lived with all of them as well. Eh?
Yeah, but I wasn't getting the sex, so.
So you've lived all over the place, or you grew up in Alaska and lived all over the rest of the U.S., or?
No, I grew up in Alaska, yes. I lived in Colorado for about 6 months when my parents got divorced, and we tried the living with mom thing.
Okay.
I've visited a number of states on the other side of the Mississippi, but I haven't really been to very many states on this side, on the eastern seaboard side.
Okay.
So yeah, no, I lived in, I grew up in Seward, lived in Fairbanks for 4 years. I got into Steven Seagal's pants. That's a whole nother story. I never met the man. And then I lived in Anchorage for a few more years, and then I got divorced and was like, well, this seems like a good time to just like move. So I ended up in Vermont.
And how is Vermont compared to some of the other places?
Well, I have Bernie, so ha ha.
I guess that's a good thing. Yeah.
It's a lot flatter. I got here and I was like, wait, there's going to be mountains. And they have, kid you not, there's one mountain that crosses the tree line in this state. One.
That's it. Eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like Saskatchewan. I don't know if there is mountains here.
From maybe a 10-minute walk from my front door, I can actually look at New York State, which is interesting because I grew up in Alaska and you can't even see another country from there. I mean, unless you're in Toke or something.
That's funny.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, New York looks really pretty today. And then I had to stop myself and rethink that.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, you don't have any kids or anything like that?
I have 2 pussies. One's a cat. He's in the other room.
That's cool, though.
Yeah. So no live-in partner. I live alone except for the other pussy that makes me do things like feed him and change the litter box.
Right.
And yeah, I have friends and I have a few. Oh, I really excel at long distance relationships. I do long term pretty okay too. It's a pattern, and I don't know if is that a holdover from Alaska where there just was nobody interesting around.
Right.
But I'm also a complete nerd and kind of an introvert in person. So a lot of my friends, the people that I've really been close to, have moved away. And I live in a college town. So, and I'm aging out of the general population. When I moved here in 98, I was a lot closer to the age of a lot of people that were here. And now I'm still living in a not very schwanky part of town. I live in a poor place. Right. Well, I live in a poor place, which means that I have really, really interesting neighbors, but we're just all poor. So,
right, yeah.
There are a lot of things that I do not have in common with a lot of people. Let's just say.
Well, when I was, I don't know, in my 20s, I was pretty poor, and like that was probably the most exciting time of my life. And not necessarily the happiest, but.
I think that you learn a lot about yourself by being poor.
Yeah.
When you look at your life and learn how to frugal down to the bare minimum,
right.
It changes your perspective on things by a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I never really got into the frugal aspect of things. It was just always like, okay, well, how do we buy food today? And then you go out and you do something and you find a way to buy food that day.
Yeah, I've been poor for a while. When I moved here, I didn't have a place to live and I didn't know anybody, but I had a job. But the job didn't start for 6 weeks.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, well, part of that was when I was younger, I had watched my mom reinvent her life a number of times. She would get into a bad situation, bad relationships, choose to move on. But I'd watched her struggle through all of those. And here I was in my mid to late 20s, and I'd never gone through the amount of things that my mom had. And I thought, you know what, if I do this now on purpose, and if I can succeed, if I can make it through this, then if I ever have to do it, I know that I can because I've already done it. So I'm not strong like she is, and there were some really terrible moments in her life. But I wanted to like put that one fear aside and have that be a non-issue or a less of an issue, that there wouldn't be so much fear if that happened.
Right. So then you feel at least like you can survive if you have to. And, yeah.
It took me a long time to figure out how to talk to Vermonters, actually.
Oh, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Because
they have a different way of talking then?
Well, it's physical space. It's what you talk about and how you address people. It was very different.
Okay.
It took me about a year before I felt that I probably wouldn't accidentally make somebody uncomfortable.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. What about you? Have you lived in other places, or are you pretty much just Saskatchewan bound?
Pretty much just Saskatchewan bound. Like I lived in Ontario for, I don't know, very brief time when my mom was out there, and then I moved to BC when my brother was out west there. He lived in Vancouver. I lived with him for 2 months or something. But
so not long enough to kind of get that sense of disassociation.
No, not really. No, it was always, I don't know. They always seemed too busy for me. Every place seems too busy. You can tell I grew up on a farm because I need the space and I need things to be a little slower than other things.
Yeah, yeah. And what is the size of Saskatchewan? I didn't look it up.
Well, we have just over 1 million people for the entire province.
No, what's the size of like where you are? Your geographic.
Oh, like Regina.
Mm-hmm.
The city that I'm in is, I think, just about. It's around 300,000.
Oh my God, that's still fucking huge.
Well, the town that I grew up in is only 10,000 people.
Okay.
But yeah, we moved to Regina like last year or something. So.
Okay, so to put this into perspective, the hometown that I came from, 3,800 people tops.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and it was you'll get this. Most people don't. It was a 2.5 hour drive to the next high school.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah. So when people are like, "Yeah, I came from like a small town like that," I was like, "No, you didn't," because you had like 5 teams that you could get to for like a football match in.
Right. Yeah.
In 30 minutes, 45 minutes tops. No, this was hours.
Yeah, like my town had a rival town that was about 50 minutes away. So there was the two schools were too close already.
Yep. Yeah, I know.
Had to be a rivalry.
Right, you're just like bumping elbows at that point.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's too close. Estevan people would come up to Weyburn and shop or whatever they do. Mm-hmm. Make our town dirty.
Oh, tourists. Oh, I fucking hate tourists. Like, we could talk about tourists for hours. But yeah.
There's not a lot of tourism in southern Saskatchewan. So.
I would come to visit. It would feel like home.
Yeah, wide open spaces. Not much going on, usually.
Well, I came from mountains, but the whole, like, not much going on.
Yeah.
I told you that I'd been married, and the first time that my later husband came with me to my hometown, we stopped off, saw my dad, saw my sister, met like all of her housemates, and I was like, all right, we're going to go downtown now. And when we left, kid you not, the Quonset hut that my sister was living in with her housemates, And most people, okay, most people don't. The common thing from Alaska is, or at least within my lexicon, it's "I'll see you later." And kid you not, within an hour and a half, we had run into 4 people that I'd said "I'll see you later" to 3 times.
Oh, jeez. Nice.
Yeah, because "I'll see you later" really means like in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It'll be at the diner, the video store, popping into the movie theater,
right?
The coffee, like the coffee shop, the diner.
Yeah, it actually means like just a little while from now.
Yeah. We don't lock doors. Yeah. We don't lock cars. The keys are probably in the ignition.
Yeah,
small.
That's how Weyburn was. We didn't lock our doors, but then we had an oil boom, so people started coming from other provinces. Mm-hmm. So then crime went up. So you have to start locking your door. But
yeah, we had the same thing in the summer with cannery workers. People would come up to work in the cannery, and there might be 12 people in the woods out back, 50 feet from your house, all camping out. So we started locking our doors occasionally then, but it was only for the summertime and only for like 6 to 8 months or 6 to 8 weeks.
So, but the rest of the year you could just leave it be.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I think that it's similar to kind of like you knock on the door, like poke your head and say, "You home?"
Right. Yeah. If nobody's home, you go home. You go in.
Yeah. Or just drop off the cake that you brought, leave it on the counter with a note.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a real town. Yeah. Was it? I mean, even Weyburn though, we are still had certain amount of progressive type of ideas, like when in the 80s and 90s when it became more popular on television to have gay people, it was just kind of like accepted. There was no pushback. Nobody was outraged that it was on television. So was that like your town was like that too, or were people outraged about progressivism?
This is a cigarette, by the way. The town overall was fairly conservative, but I think I learned my humanism from my father, who was the most conservative person that was in my immediate circle. Nice. And he's very outgoing. He's very good with talking with people. He's very accepting. He's a very loving person. And so my perspective might have been biased because I got some of that from him. But we had 2 lesbians that worked in the cannery all summer long and then took the winter off. And when the town was dry, you could always get dykeweed. That's what it was called. Like you would like if nobody else had pot, like it was going to be like bottom of the barrel. It would be a whole lot of shake, some seed, some stem, but you knew what you were paying and you knew what you were getting when you got it.
Right.
And I never heard anybody really give either of them pushback.
Right.
And when I was a teenager in the 80s, a couple of men moved into town, and they were housemates, and they opened up a video store.
Right.
And it was kind of one of those common knowledge. Everybody knew that they were a gay couple.
Right.
But it wasn't really, it wasn't an open source of ongoing gossip. People just say like, they're together, right? And people would like maybe poo-poo and maybe go like, yeah, whatever. But that was the video store in town. So if you wanted to get your VHS rentals, then
you had to go there anyway.
Pretty much. Yep.
Yeah.
So
yeah, actually, I guess now that I think about it, my grade 9 teacher was came out as gay later, like when I was an adult, because he didn't feel comfortable in the 90s or early 90s to come out at that time.
Yeah.
So I guess it wasn't as progressive as maybe I imagined it.
Yeah. Oh, here's one for you. My sister actually lived in California for a little bit of her teen years. I think her sophomore or junior year. and then came back and finished as a senior. And she was living in the LA area in Garden Grove with some of my family. And Garden Grove is a very conservative part of California. Okay. Lots of churches. And she was living with my lots of churches kind of family.
Nice.
And when she came back to town, she'd been back to town for less than 2 hours. And my dad was getting phone calls at work. Ben, have you seen the tattoo on Steffi's shoulder? I shouldn't use it.
Oh, no.
Have you seen the tattoo on your daughter's shoulder? And what she had was the feminist symbol with the inverted triangle done in like jailhouse ink style. It was
oh, geez,
it was
really?
not pretty. It had probably been done with a ballpoint pen. But she was like wearing that thing proudly, and people were calling, have you seen your daughter's tattoo?
Nice.
Like that's how bad it was. Very small town. At work.
Yeah.
Not just over the collection plate. Yeah. So
yeah.
We can actually get back to talking about poly if you want, but we can keep talking about getting chased by moose, bears.
Yeah. Have you actually been chased by a moose?
I haven't been chased by a moose, but there have been a couple times where I've opened the front door and gone like, oh, there's a moose right there. Closed the door and called into work and said, hey, I'm going to have to call out because of moose. And people are like, yeah, get here when you can. Or there have been times when I've been trapped outside of my house. I pulled up and there's a moose licking salt off my front porch. And I'm like, I can't get in because she's with her calf. And that might be a bad situation. So.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we didn't have much for wildlife actually around my town or around my farm that I grew up on. Mm. You get skunks and porcupines, and you always have to pull the quills out of the dog's nose.
Yep, but... been there too. Been there too. You hold the dog, I'll get the pliers.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, what do you do for fun?
What do I do besides masturbate? You mean?
Well, yeah. Obviously, other things.
Actually,
that's the one everybody has, but nobody mentions.
Oh, I do because I'm a sex nerd. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Surprisingly enough, I used to knit a lot, and then I shattered my wrist. So knitting and book reading kind of went away, which is how I found podcasts. I couldn't do anything. So
right.
that became my form of books. Other than that, I watch movies. I do read. Not a lot. I'm kind of boring. I'm pretty boring.
That's okay. How did you shatter your wrist, though?
Oh, it was a women's comp, thank goodness. But I was helping to load something in the back of a truck, stepped off the gate that had been dropped down.
Okay.
Didn't quite get my foot on the ground. It kind of like skidded a little bit, bonked my head on my way down, which kind of threw my balance off. And if I had ever taken Aikido, because I am clumsy as fuck, if I had ever taken Aikido, I would say this was totally an Aikido move. Like I did this nice slow rollback. I had a tiny scrape on my elbow. I had a slight pull in my hip because I had caught my foot on the brace on my way back. But on my way down, I hit it. I think I hit my wrist on the side of the truck as I fell, because I remember landing and thinking, okay, so I'm not trying to catch myself. I'm not trying to I'm not going to shatter like the everything. So it was like this nice slow roll back. And I thought I should probably put my arms down now. And then all of a sudden this one started throbbing. I'm like, I think I kind of fucked something up and I'm not really sure how I did that.
Geez.
Yeah. So I actually have a $2,000 wind chime now because I had a plate put in and I had the plate taken out because of the scar tissue. So I have the plate and the screws and a little pea cup from the hospital. And so my $2,000 titanium wind chime.
Jeez. That's pretty cool.
Well, they were kind of creeped out. I said, can I keep that? Like, when you get this out of me, can I have all those parts? Like, I paid for them.
Right, yeah. Makes sense. You should get to keep them. Although I don't imagine that's a request they get very often.
Well, I'm creepy too. I have my my molars from when I had those
Okay.
when I had those taken out, and I lost a toenail once, and I still have that toenail.
Okay. Yeah, I can't say that I've ever kept my teeth or anything.
But it's kind of cool because they weren't in packets, so they came out clean. So I have them like,
Oh, is that right?
yeah, I have them roots and all. It's not like I have a whole like handful of shards. I have 4 actual molars.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not actually very often they come out clean like that, is it?
I don't think it is, and it's probably because the rest of my teeth are all like super scrunched up in front. So that probably I think that everything pushed forward, just they made room. But no, I've always been kind of not creepy that way. I don't want to call myself creepy. I kind of
creepy doesn't sound like the right word, eh?
Well, it's I've never been around somebody who's been actively dead in front of me, like an accidental something, or I've only been to a few funerals of people that I cared about. But well, you said you weren't around wildlife. It was something that death was always kind of a part of life. But being on a farm, you understand that too. That it's it's interesting because even when family members would pass away or whatever, and everybody's in the mourning stage and everybody's really upset, and I never reached that same level of upset. I always was kind of sitting there and I felt really awkward. Yep. Well, I told you that I'd gone to the holder of my death, that I had gone to support her while she was doing the whole mourning process. So what happened is, because she wasn't a biological relation of her father's girlfriend, is she went to the memorial service. And then the family got together and she was kind of excused. And this is part of the reason that we are friends, is she came back to the house and I had brought our traditional dinner, which would be a box of wine and a bunch of popcorn. So what we did was, she's also a photographer. So her dad had just killed a deer recently, so it was hanging out in the barn. We went and pet the bunnies that would be food later. We pet the barn cats that were full of fleas. We hung out with the deer, and I was her lighting person, which meant that I was holding that, on a 4-foot extension cord, that lamp that has the cage around it, and I would hold the deer in a certain light and kind of angle the light up towards something and say right. No, this is going to be really awesome. It's got great shadows. So we spent essentially 6 hours hanging out in the barn, getting drunk and playing with a dead deer for fun. That's how we mourned. That was very indicative of who we are as people.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
Well, it's a little weird. Most people would not understand that at all, but it was perfect for both of us.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really get most people, so so that seems okay to me.
Yeah, perfect. All right.
Seems totally legit.
Yeah, but death happens. When I brought my cat home as a kitten, I cried the entire time that I had him in the car on my way home. I'm going to outlive you, and it's going to suck when you die because I love you so much. But it wasn't oh, I've got a new kitten. This is awesome. No.
Just pissed off because now you have another thing that's going to die.
Well, he chose me on purpose, so. But but death happens. It's part of being science. And when I die, actually, I'm a big proponent of body farms, and I really wish that every state down here had at least one. And realistically, each state should have at least 3, 4, I don't know, 6. Same thing, every province up in Canada should have several, because there's so much difference in how bodies decompose that
right.
There really needs to be better data analysis. Just getting information from Virginia, and I think they have one in Texas now, but I could be incorrect, and you're going to fact check me on that, it's not sufficient to cover the diversity of the land, what actually happens when a body is exposed. But yeah, if I could dedicate if I want my body to go to science, take all the parts you want, or just like dump me like half submerged in a bog and see what happens. 'Cause that's interesting. That's cool. That's,
right.
That's cool. Like that's where forensics comes from.
Yeah. I always thought that, like, for sure, donate as many organs as possible to whoever might need them. And then the rest can be disposed of in any way that can help somebody else. Like,
yeah.
If it's science can use it, then great.
Well, and that's part of why I want to be a body farm, is because there's like, other than maybe like a natural burial where there's no chemicals involved, or a cremation, or the whole like fertilizer thing inside your bloodstream and being encased in a box, like there's not a whole lot of other options. So yeah, body farm. Yeah, that's totally cool. That's
sure. Why not?
well, because that creeps some people out. Well, I don't need a marker. Who the fuck's going to remember me in 100 years? Nobody.
Well, that's just it, right? Like, okay, so your kids are now obligated to go see you all the time.
Yeah, I have a cat, and he's going to die before I do.
Yeah, so
he doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Well,
I told, I just always told my kids that I'm donating my body to science and my organs to organ donation. So
yeah. Well, I don't really think that many of my organs qualify. So you can have them if you want, but probably most of them are broken. Yeah, body farm.
There you
go. So what else do you have going on in your head?
Not much. I'm just thinking, like, we kind of covered death a little bit more than I have in the other couple interviews. I kind of did want to find out what people think of death. And like, I mean, it sounds morbid, but it's so important to the way we live that it seems like something that should be talked about more.
Oh,
I guess.
Oh, I'll talk about death, sex, whatever, like relationships. So did you know where the whole embalming process kind of got, not really started, but popularized?
No, I didn't. I have no idea.
Abraham Lincoln.
Is that right?
It is right. That he went on
That's interesting.
tour after his death, and him from getting like creepy and moldy, they embalmed him. And because of that, that's where the whole embalming process kind of got, like I said, not started, but its movement started becoming more popular. That this is a thing that happens, is you embalm your people. Whereas before that, most people just like, you show up in a pine box and you just put them in the ground, sunken hole.
Right.
12 years later, or whatever time it takes. So yeah, Abraham Lincoln was the one that started this whole weird movement and kind of in the same way that poly happened in the like 30s, 40s, 50s, or not poly, monogamy happened in the 30s, 40s, 50s. It became this ideal, which didn't really have anything to do with real life or real death. I suppose that's the case, maybe.
Yeah. There's not really a purpose to the embalming except to like have a corpse that looks good a little longer, right? Like,
right, but why bother? Like,
yeah, well, exactly.
What's the point? That just makes the people that are left behind have more precious moments. That doesn't seem like a very good way to deal with the actual reality of death. That just seems like I'm actually going to compare that to kind of a Christian notion of it doesn't really let you deal with the real things that are happening. It lets you kind of put everything off and kind of not blame it on somebody else, but just not have to deal with it. That I'm like, I don't have to be a great person. I just to get better before I die. That sort of mentality of it's not my responsibility. And I'm pretty big on people taking responsibility for everything that they do. You have to be responsible for your life choices. Like, hey, I fucked up big, and I'm going to try not to do that again. And if I fuck up big again, then that's one more lesson that I apparently need to relearn. And so I think reality is more important to live with. And I think a lot of people don't in a lot of ways, including me, probably including you. Probably including all of your listeners. There are things that we ignore, but as many things as we can pay attention to, the better.
Yeah, that's right. I can agree with that for sure.
I'm holding you to that.
The more things we can pay attention to, the better.
Yeah. And death, pets, relationships, whatever it is, eating.
Wow, yeah, that's right. Eating properly or eating, semi-healthily is pretty decent. A few years ago I started, well, I guess it's 10 years ago now, I started exercising and eating differently. And it's come and gone, but I think that it's been a good choice in a way. It's a good thing that I pay more attention to.
What was the biggest change that you made?
I don't know, because when I hit 30, I changed a lot. I changed just about everything.
Why 30?
I don't know. I think because I was super insecure and I felt really shitty about myself, and I was just like, okay, I got to do something about this.
I accept that I'm fat.
So then I started. Well, I was always super skinny, eh? Like, okay. When I was 30, I was 6 feet tall and weighed 145 pounds.
Holy shit! I don't think I've ever weighed 145 pounds. I mean, I'm sure that I passed it at some point between like 12 and 14, but I don't remember ever weighing that much.
Yeah, now I average about 180 to 190, somewhere in there, but...
Yeah, you're still skinny, dude.
Yeah. This, when I got it in my head somewhere, when I was a kid, that the doctor's board of ideal weights, or whatever.
Oh, I hate that. The BMI.
Yeah, like it was my ideal weight for my height, or for being 6 feet tall, was 180 pounds. So I always imagined, like, if I could weigh 180 pounds, well, I'd be this friggin' giant. Like, that's 35 pounds more than I weighed. Like, and now when I was 30 at 145 pounds, yeah, like, it was weird though. Until I started actually lifting weights, I could not gain weight. Didn't matter what I ate at all.
Interesting. Oh, it'll change like as you get older.
Oh yeah.
I'm in my mid 40s right now, and it changes, but. Like, I've always been considered borderline obese, like always. Well,
is that right?
Mm-hmm. But you know what? I have a very physical job, and I walk 5-ish miles a day just at work. Like, don't get me wrong. Like when I get home, I'm a complete sloth. But but I can. Like I can do some stuff. Like I've been there. I've got some.
Right.
I've got some. Like I'm not scrawny, I'm not thin, I'm not lazy. I just weigh more, and I blame my German and Irish ancestors for that, because I came from a long line of duppies who were like short and squat and had childbearing hips and like boobs out to here, and you know what? They're just like round people. Like that's just what our bodies are built like. And as long as you're healthy within your body, and as long as you're happy with who you are.
No, that's exactly right. That's something that I've come to since then, like, is the idea that, okay, well, if you're happy with who you are, then maybe you don't need to have these ideals. I mean, I've always been way more forgiving of other people than I am of myself too, so it's like...
Okay, so here's the tack that I took with this, is if you don't want what I got, you don't get any. Like,
there you go.
Like, if you think that I need to be skinnier, fuck you. Like, you don't get this. You don't get to be part of enjoying my body, because my body is pretty fucking awesome, because bodies are kind of cool. And
there you go. Yeah.
If I've got like a little bit more belly than you'd like, or a little more butt than you'd love, either suck it up or get out.
Well, that's just it, eh? Like, it's not really up to somebody else to be picky about what your body does.
Right. I mean, people can have things that they find. Maybe there are people that only like people that are of a certain body type, and like, more power to them, but don't put that on me. That's
yeah. I don't know.
isn't there something shitty about saying, well, I'll only date people of X body type?
Right. Well, and that's why I became like actually, I'm going to blame Star Trek for, no, seriously, I'm going to blame Star Trek for that. That's why I started questioning everything that was in my life was, and I've talked about this a little bit before. Have you watched much of it? Next Generation?
Well, not in a long time.
Okay.
I watched all of Next Gen back when it came out.
Okay,
But...
perfect. So this is me watching it same time as you, maybe like 1 hour difference. So you were watching it 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was watching it at 5. But Beverly Crusher falls in love with a Trill, and dude's handsome. He's romantic. He's totally into her too. And his body is failing. And she does everything medically that she can to help save that body, and it just doesn't work. And the Trill gets replanted into another host. And the other host happens to be a woman. And Beverly Crusher said, like, oh, hell the fuck no. Like, I'm out. Like, I love you, but I can't do this. And that got me thinking, like, really, you are in love with this personality. You're in love with this person. You're completely going to disregard the love that you have because of the shape that it's in. That seems fucking ridiculous.
It seems shitty.
It was really shitty. Like I was hating on the Beverly for a while. And it got me thinking, like, okay, so like, am I straight? Am I not straight? Why do I think that I'm straight? Okay, so what else have other people told me about myself that don't apply?
Right.
And so that got me thinking about religion. Then that later got me thinking about relationship structures. They got me thinking about a lot of things. And I fortunately was a nerd, so I had already had a background in other literature of some sort. That I really think that sci-fi and fantasy do a lot for opening people's minds to, you don't have to agree with them, but it gives you a different perspective into a different way of thinking. Sure. But yeah, I blame Beverly Crusher for my life right now.
That's perfect. No, that's great. I'm looking at the time, and we're over an hour now.
Are we really? Okay.
Better get going here. But I really appreciate you chatting with me.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we missed?
Oh, I don't know. I'm pretty much down for talking whenever. So if you ever get bored and like think of something else you want to, even if you just want to sit down and say like, hey, we're not really recording, but if you want to just chat, so far I'm fine with that, because this has been a fun conversation, just kind of all over the place. Yeah. So
it's a good conversation. I like that.
That's why we talk to people.
Yeah, that's right. We don't always talk about issues, right? Like,
right.
Having a normal conversation with people at work, I never talk about issues. We talk about this and that and the other thing, and just whatever comes up, and it's
I guess
more fluid. And
yeah, the only thing that I would say is, like, if I'm a not great activist other than in my own life and personally, right?
Right.
But what I'm going to say to other people that have strong feelings about things is, trust me that I'm going to hold down my part of the world. That I might not care about every activist, everything ever. I don't have the brain space for all of that. Everybody's going to have the issues that are important to them, and trust that I'm doing my part to make the world a better place for you, even if it's not your issue. And I'm going to trust you to hold down your part of the place. You know, it's your culture, it's your community, it's your choice of passion, it's your choice of interest, it's your choice of how and when and where to step up and say something or do something that will make a difference in somebody else's life. But I think that's more important within this atheist community, is let everybody care about their own things and don't expect me to care about everything, but trust me to care about what I care about.
Right. No, that sounds good.
Yeah. So there's my mini pitch. I have nothing else to pitch.
Yeah, you don't have a show anymore, hey?
Well, apparently not.
It's been a while. So.
It's been a while, and yeah, and I don't do any of the computer stuff. I communicate with people, and I was trying to interact with people ahead of time, like actually get people on board. But yeah, all of the computer stuff is out of my hands, and I am poor, so I can't do anything about that right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. I'm gonna let you go.
Okay. I'm gonna go wolf down some dinner, and then I'm gonna go hang out in Sacrilege for a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Yeah. You too, Corey. I'll talk to you later. And thanks so much for doing this. This was fun.
Oh yeah, you bet.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
You got it. Bye.
Bye. All right, that's it for the interview. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Skeptic Voices, the podcast for getting to know the people in our community. I don't really have much for links where you can find Jeanne, but I'll provide any that I can find for any shows she's on or has been on. I really want to thank Jeanne for coming on the show and letting me get to know her. She's a very cool person and comes highly recommended as a friend by many people in the skeptic and atheist community. That's going to be it. I want to talk about a couple things before I go. First, I want to mention that people should keep their ears open for random live broadcasts of Brainstorm on Spreaker. I have up to 3 hours of broadcast time each day that I can use, and while I'll never be on the air every day, I do plan on doing a live radio show just every now and then, and to just chat about whatever. I recently did a show for about an hour and a half on the 4th anniversary of Brainstorm. These shows will only be available on Spreaker. They won't be on the regular Apple Podcasts feed for Brainstorm. And they won't be available on Stitcher. Like I say, just Spreaker. Spreaker.com/user/brainstorm podcast is where you'll get them. I'm looking into getting a new URL just to make that easier, but for now, that's where you find them. Next, I want to talk about the conference. I'm honestly getting a little bit disheartened by the lack of support from our local community. We got some rather unhelpful pushback because we're exploring the intersection of skepticism and social justice. And I think that this kind of conference could be of great service to many in the community who are on the fence in regards to social justice. And we need those who already have an interest in social justice and skepticism to lend us some financial help to get this going. As I've said before, we're exploring a few venue options, and we've started pricing out flights and contacting speakers. The longer it takes us to get funding, though, the later into 2018 we'll have to schedule things. I hope that you can support our endeavor to explore social justice and skeptical thinking. You can do that by donating any amount at all to gofundme.com/shift-2-reason-conference-2018. That link will be in the show notes, and your donation will go towards your purchase of a ticket. I want to give a huge thanks to the person who runs the CFI Canada Twitter account for boosting our signal. It means a lot knowing that some people and groups do consider this type of conference worth having. For anything else, you can email me at mail@brainstormblog.net. If you want to hear more of these, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast player. I highly recommend using BeyondPod, where you can search for your favorite Brainstorm-related project. You can follow Skeptic Voices, The Skeptic Studio, Shift to Reason Radio, or rebroadcasts of the Hardcore Skeptic Examines on your regular Brainstorm podcast feed, or you can follow each show on its own. I'd love it if you could go and rate all my various podcasts and give me a review on Apple Podcasts, Facebook, or anywhere else that you rate and review things, and share the hell out of the shows. You can check out the show notes for this episode at thebrainstormpodcast.com or on Spreaker under Brainstorm Podcast or Skeptic Voices. These episodes will eventually be up on our main website as well, brainstormblog.net. Thanks to our financial supporters, Aaron, Daryl, Destin Sucks, Lachlan, Lisa, Magnus, Michael, Nathan, Positively Skeptical, Rob, Stephanie, and Will. If you want to join their ranks and help the show grow, then you can do that at patreon.com/brainstormpodcast. You can join us live every second week when we broadcast live on Spreaker. You can find us at spreaker.com/user/brainstormpodcast. I think that's everything. Thanks for listening, and remember, the truth matters, and so do people.
Things got better. And everything could change like that. And all these years go by so fast, but nothing lasts forever.
I even put on clothes for you. Look at this. I'm wearing a shirt.
Well, right on.
Look at you and your setup.
Yeah, I try to have like 6 recordings of everything, so that way nothing ever gets lost.
Oh my God, hang on, hair. That happened to me a couple of times where I was just like, oh my God, like seriously, like we lost all that audio.
Yeah, it's a pain. I know. I've heard of it happening to enough people that I'm super like paranoid about it.
So Saskatchewan, eh?
Yeah, Saskatchewan. That's right.
Do I get to be considered an honorary Canadian citizen?
I don't think I have the power to grant that.
Oh, sure you do. Come on.
Sure. Yeah, why not?
All right, then I'll make you an honorary Alaskan for fair.
Okay, that sounds good. Is that where you're from?
Yeah, I grew up there.
That's pretty cool. It's almost as cold as here.
I was going to say literally, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, so did you... Oh, shit, hang on. Remind me later. Is this recording? God damn it, I forgot to check. Fucking A. I don't know if it did. I think I might have missed like the first 20-something minutes.
Oh, shit.
Well, you forgot to remind me after 5 to check it. I'm totally blaming you for this.
That's fair. I forgot to remind you. You did mention it before, so.
Yeah. And it might have been because I blipped out there for a second, but all right. Hopefully that's still going. And thank goodness you have backup audio.
Yeah, I've got lots of backup audio, so.
Good. So what was I in the middle of? I feel like I was in the middle of saying something and then flaked out.
We were talking about being poor.
Oh, yeah.
Here's to us.